Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. In the first story, we'll tell you why it's best not to set up our OP at work. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. My ex-friend and neighbor gets what's coming to him. First, a little background. About 6 years ago, I moved into my current house in a great neighborhood. I work from home when I'm not traveling, and it's a great spot in a nice part of town and near everything. When I first moved in, one of the ladies on my street came over to introduce herself and was getting quite frisky with me. I was told by other folks that she was this way with everyone and that she was totally harmless. I'll admit this disappointed me because I thought she was pretty hot. Anyway, her husband and I became buddies, and we'd occasionally golf together, and I became a part of their group of friends. I was invited to many family get-togethers, even though I'm single, and got along great with all the wives and kids. She was always hinting and flirting around with me, and to be honest, I loved it. Her husband and I worked in similar fields, and the company that I worked for acquired his company about 3 years ago. Unbeknownst to me, he got slightly demoted and lost a bit of salary. For some reason, he thinks that I had something to do with it. I didn't. It was not in my field, and I actually don't even know any of the people that reorganized his unit. He asked me to help him, and unfortunately I couldn't. He decided to take it out on me personally. Golf games started happening without me, cookouts and local outings went on, and I didn't get invited. Oh well, if he wants to be that way, there's nothing I can do about it. Then he upped the ante. He tried to get me fired. My boss came to me about some anonymous source that says I was doing some illegal things and potentially making our company liable. I was forced to see a psychologist and passed numerous drug tests to stay out in the field doing sales. Needless to say, I knew who the source was. I confronted him about it, and he denied the entire thing with a smirk on his face. So that's when the revenge plan started. Not knowing which way to turn, I decided that I didn't want to cause him to lose his job. I couldn't figure out a way to do it anyway, since we're not in the same division. After a year or so, I completely forgot about it until about 10 days ago, I ran into his wife after she'd been at church, and she was dressed to kill. She totally flirted me up and was hitting on me brazenly right in the grocery store, so I decided to fire back. I told her that if she showed up at my house the next morning around 10 a.m. in that dress and those heels, I could not control what happened next. Guess who showed up at 9:30 the next morning? The wife, wearing the same dress and heels. When I let her in the house, it was like unleashing a wild animal. She ended up staying for a couple of hours, and there was not a way that I didn't have her. Since then, she's been over twice more, but things will get a little more sporadic since school's out and she has responsibilities now during the day. Try and cost me my job, and I'll get you back. And our next story. Keep digging until I get back. Long ago, in a land a couple hundred miles away, my father wanted to dress up the front corner of our property with a section of decorative fence and a few rose bushes. Myself, being a tween-age boy and not having the good sense to be somewhere else, was drafted to help him one hot July Saturday afternoon. We brought the new fence posts to the corner of the lot, along with a shovel and a post hole digger, and set in about the task. It was a long, slow process, as the clay-heavy soil was fairly dry and hard-baked, and as such, each hole was taking the better part of 20 minutes to dig. This definitely wasn't on the list of things I wanted to spend my afternoon doing, but such is life. Right about the time we started on the final hole, Mom yelled to Dad from the house, announcing that he had a phone call. As these were the days before mobile phones, Dad headed off to the house and instructed me to keep digging until I get back. Lucky for me, this hole was a bit different than the first four. About the moment he got to the door of the house, I busted through the clay layer into much sandier soil, where I could get a couple of inches of soil in one scoop rather than perhaps a quarter inch per scoop. Easy peasy. Now, I was a good kid. I didn't cause trouble of any significant variety. I got good grades, and I helped out around the house when I got caught unawares. But seizing an opportunity for malicious compliance was definitely among my personal strengths. So I kept digging. And digging. Post holer in, squeeze, post holer out. Dump, repeat. Dad wasn't on that phone call very long, but I made good time, and by the time I saw him at the door coming back, I was quite literally putting the post holer all the way into the ground to the point where the tips of the handles were just below the surface of the ground. And I couldn't really dig because I couldn't open up the handles to squeeze the digging end any longer. So if I had to guess, I'd say the hole was about 5 feet deep. Dad: "How's it going?" Me: "I think it's deep enough now." Dad: "Let's put the post in and check." Me: huge grin while he stoops over to pick up the post. Dad proceeds to drop the post in the hole, all the way in the hole. See, these posts were maybe hip height when installed, probably about 5 feet long themselves. So there's Dad, momentarily struck speechless, amazement washing across his face. He looks at me. Me: "You told me to keep digging until you got back." Shrugging. Dad: "You little crap." Laughing. Dad had to grab the post with his fingertips and pull it back out of the hole, and it wasn't but a few seconds of work to refill the hole to the proper depth. And to this day, he loves telling the story of his maliciously compliant son. And our next story. Whose easement is it anyway? A guy plants a nice tree to improve his property, provide shade. Municipality comes along, cuts it down a few years later. Why? Well, it was planted in the space between the sidewalk and the street, and the easement belongs to the city. The homeowner's chuffed, to say the least, so he hatches a plan. Not a plan that'll solve anything or bring back his beloved birch, of course, but a plan which will stick a thumb in the eye of his tormentors. He stops mowing the section between the sidewalk and the street. After all, it isn't his land, right? Of course, they have an ordinance about mowing. Soon enough, the grass is long enough to draw the ire and fines of the city. He takes it to the mattress with them, objecting at the next board meeting, demanding all of his entitled due process to dismiss the fines. Ultimately, it goes before a judge, who does dismiss the fines based on the wording of the ordinance not covering the homeowner's responsibility clearly enough. The city changes the law after that, but he certainly got his satisfaction from tying them up in knots for almost a year. And our last story. Revenge is a dish best served cold and rammed down your neck. In 1968-69, at the height of the Vietnam War, my stepdad was stationed at Treasure Island in San Francisco. He was Navy, and to get this detail out of the way quickly, he didn't go to Vietnam. What he did do, I only heard secondhand through my mother as he passed away in 2003 when I was 18, so this won't be a very detailed retelling. From here on out, SD will be stepdad and FF will be F-Face, who's the recipient of my stepdad's wrath. Anyway, on with the story. When my SD was transferred to Treasure Island, he quickly found out a horrible truth. A group of people, a part of the military who FF was a part of, were befriending Green Guild recruits soon headed to Vietnam, getting them drunk, shooting them up with heroin, and taking compromising photographs of them while they were nodded off to use to coerce them into being drug mules. How my SD found out and managed to not get mixed up in it, I don't have details of, unfortunately. All that I do know is that when he did find out, he of course went through the proper/usual channels of reporting it, but as far as I could gather from the retelling, nothing was ever done about it, obviously. They clearly felt like they had bigger things to deal with, so my SD, being the sort of character who hates to see these scales of justice so horribly toppled over, made it a point to follow these men around and try to intervene when he could if they tried to F with anyone. I actually met one of the men he'd helped and subsequently got his butt kicked for after my SD passed. So despite the vigilante/superhero undertones making the story seem almost too fantastic to be real, after meeting the guy, I was certain the old man wasn't pulling my leg from the grave. Anyways, as FF was extremely annoyed by my SD's interventions, he was constantly trying to push his buttons at appropriate times in hopes my SD would get in trouble and eventually be court-martialed. It didn't work, fortunately. Although it wasn't hard to get my SD going at that time in his life, he was full of pee and vinegar and drank a lot. At this point in the story, timelines kind of get blurred for me, but important factors are this. One thing my SD always had on him, no matter where he went, was a camera, which I now have and is one of my most cherished objects. Eventually, he got photographic evidence of what FF and his cronies were doing. What they depicted and just how damning they were, I have no idea, but it was enough that my SD felt confident they would take him down. On top of that, he also had been taking meticulous notes on the whats, wheres, and whens of FF's movements over what I'm thinking is a couple of years. But my SD did not provide the evidence right away. Super not clear on the details why, but around the time when he had compiled all this evidence, I'm pretty sure my SD had been in the Navy close to 10 years. He'd moved up a couple of levels from where people in the Navy start. Sorry, my knowledge of the Navy/military is pedestrian at best. One day he's in need of some help moving his girlfriend's things from her apartment to his place on base, so he either recruits the use of military personnel below him to help or uses a military vehicle. Not super sure on that, but the point is that he used his position to help move his girlfriend on base, and most of the people who knew genuinely could not care less. But FF found out, and FF smiled grimly, I'm sure, and saw his opportunity. He snitched, and my SD was court-martialed and demoted 2 levels for the misuse of military personnel or something or other. And thus blossomed a rage so deep in my SD, it could be the kin of an earthquake far beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean. A threat so menacing, you wouldn't know it at face value until it's too late, and the wrath of the tsunami is crashing down on you. And so my SD waited, spent his years getting back his previous rank and beyond, although he was often met with opposition as he tried to get to the much higher ranks because FF was often at the ear of at least one of the approving people who hand out ranks in the Navy. God, I'm so sorry to anyone in the Navy reading this. It actually got so bad that other people started to wonder what was keeping my SD back from getting any higher, to give a little context. But my SD still waited and waited, continuing to keep tabs on FF meticulously as FF climbed the ranks higher and higher and higher still, until after 10 effing years of letting this man who ruined the lives of so many and tried to ruin my SD's Navy career get the absolutely zenith of his dreams, goals, and achievements to taste the glory of the sun at the top of the mountain, where he could then rip it all away from him in one fell swoop. SD brought out every bit of evidence against him. FF was court-martialed, dishonorably discharged, and sent to prison. A year later, my SD was made Master Chief Petty Officer, as there was finally no FF sabotaging him, and spent the rest of his Navy career as such, retiring after 30 years and sometime around the early 90s. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.